Karen the Warp Spinster here. Thank you for joining me today on my channel. It is a rainy-ish, gloomy day here today. So as always, I am happy to have you here. Last week we did this block, which just used 2.5-inch squares. Then we did another strip of 4, split it in half, and moved it across. Everyone was I think it was pretty unanimous that you all liked the circles, so the circles stay. I think what I might do though is use different shades of gray, which will add a little more interest to it. So for example, the smaller one might be a darker gray. This one, I think this is probably about as light as I want to get because I need to contrast with these fabrics. So that's another thing that I want to explore today. But before we do that, I want to do, I think I may have 2 alternating blocks for this particular quilt. And that is a smaller one. And I'm thinking, do I even want 2 or do I want just 1? Because I want it to be almost like just a dot in the middle. You know, think of a domino with 1 dot in the middle, even though I'm going to have some things shifted. So I'm thinking I might do that. Let's try it with 1, see what happens. If we hate it, we'll do another one. And so actually the first thing that I want to do is to split this one. And then, so this is a 2.5-inch square, roughly. So I need to do 1 1/4, and I say roughly because it's got pinked edges there. And now I can split this, and I can do a number of things, of course. I can do this. I can have one of them hug and this one be way up there. Or I could put them both here. And I think, oh no, that's going to look like a face, isn't it? I wonder what would happen if we did this. We could do this. Well, I don't know. Let's just stick with the original plan. And when we add a circle on there, that's really going to look like a face, isn't it? Will it look like a lopsided face if we do this? That might be better. Let's plan on it not being symmetrical at all. This one wants to get close. This one wants to just get away as far as possible. We'll try that. I don't want it to drift too far up because I want it to still tie in with this, but I don't want it, I want it to sort of still be one piece. We'll see how that goes. So you know the drill from last week. I'm going to need to fill this with white so that it's, I think it's like 10 7/8 inches or something as I recall. So I'll just do some fill white on all 3 of these, and then I'll do a fill strip in between in white. And then I'll have to think about how much white I want on either side. So this is going to be a block that has a lot of white, but that's how I intend it. So I will go ahead and do that. And once this is finished and we put these 2 together, we'll see how they look. And then there's just another simple thing that I want to try, and then I'll just dump it all into Procreate and see what happens when we start rotating and moving things around. Here are the fillers so far. Now I just need the pieces on the side, and they need to be whatever is needed to make 10 7/8 so that it is square. I still have to trim this off. I thought it was kind of Eastery looking here. Looks a little bit like an Easter bunny with it. Never mind. I did on these strips also put in these narrow strips, the narrow gray strips, partly because my white scraps are not long enough to do this entire length. So I wanted to be able to use those scraps, so this just means I can have seams in there. And I like the effect as well. And these were left over from here, so they're actually going to do that. Although, you know, in the end, we may turn the block this way. We'll see. So I'm going to figure out, I'm going to put 2 strips of white over here. I am going to have to find some long enough for that. And because I decided to put these on the inside instead of the outside. I guess this is why I buy white by the 20-yard bolt. And then just square it up to the 10 7/8. I want it to be sort of half and half because I want this to be roughly in the middle, but I don't think I want it to be exactly half and half. So given that I've got quite a bit of white space over here, it might be a bit narrower on this side and a bit wider on that one. So I'm going to trim this up, add those sides, and then we're going to talk about some circles too. Here is the finished alternating block. I'm glad that I went with just 1 square here. I think 2 would have been too many for the effect I want, which is just a dot in the middle here. I also swapped out the grays here, so I have 3 different grays going. Well, the largest one is the lightest gray, then a little bit darker, and then quite a bit darker. So I would like to find a gray that is somewhere in between these 2. But I don't have any in my stash, so that is going to have to do for the moment. And then this one, of course, could also have a circle in it. And again, I like to do things by odd numbers, so 1 is good. 3, I think, might be too much for this. It just would be too many things. It would make this a lot busier and leave me less negative space, and the negative space is really what I'm looking for here. Actually, it should go this way because I didn't pay any attention to which side was going to be narrower than the other. Now, the alternative, of course, is to, because these are square, and I guess I sort of intended them to, I like that, I think, doing that. And I'm going to load these into Procreate and kind of play around with them and see how it looks. But I do like just this quite spare, quite sparse block here. And, you know, I could also do a colored circle. I'm almost thinking I want to pull in a little bit of gold over here. So I'm going to try doing a gold circle and then I'll be back. I don't know. I won't know till I see it. Well, I sort of did a gold one. I decided I wanted that gray accent in there, so why not piece a gray strip into a gold square and then cut out the circle, and then I'd have a little bit of extra interest. So I've brought the gold in from here, but I've also kept the accent from the gray circle, and now I can turn that so that it is straight across, up and down, or diagonally, depending on what sort of interest in movement I might want to add to it. Which has me thinking about some other things. This may end up just being a sampler of different ideas for what to do with these. But that's it for the sewing for this week, I think. I'm going to, I'll say this one more time, 3rd time's the charm, put these into Procreate and play a little bit with them, and we'll see how that turns out. I have done some playing in Procreate, and I have several things to show you. There's not a lot of difference in them, but I think in the end, you'll probably have a favorite or two. So I have labeled them, and I would love your opinion in the comments below. Just let me know which ones by letter are the ones that you like the best. The first one is a pretty straightforward grid setting, and I've alternated the 2 blocks that we did. Of course, the colors would be more varied than they're shown here because I've just mostly duplicated the same thing. And they're alternating vertical and horizontal. Pretty standard set. It's okay. And I think if the colors were more varied, it would be better. And next up, I decided just to see what it would look like if the alternate blocks were also vertical. And it's a different look. Not entirely sure how I feel about it, but it's a look. Then we have a grid setting that is shifted down. So it gives kind of a diagonal look to things. It looks like that 3rd column there could go up a little bit more to keep that vertical look, or that diagonal look going, but you get the effect anyway, I think. Now this is it's kind of symmetrical, but it's not strictly a grid setting because I've shifted things, and I love to shift things up and down. I just like to do that. And I've also put it in the center with wide borders on either side because I've always liked that. Typically I will put the blocks if you divide the canvas into 3, or the top into 3 sections with 2 lines dividing it, then typically I would center the block portion of it on that first line, that first 3rd line. But here, I don't know, I could if I wanted to make the quilt wider. I tend to like to divide things in thirds, but I didn't want to make the quilt too wide. Then for D, I have added in some gray lines to sort of tie together with the narrow gray bands that I put in the blocks. And I think it gives it a little more structural sort of effect. It almost starts to look prairie style, where there's, well, I guess maybe mid-century is what I'm saying, not prairie. And I kind of like it, and I like that the lines are not the same. So there are 3 horizontal lines that intersect with the vertical line, but they're unevenly spaced, and they're different widths, and they're pointing, I guess, in different directions. And I kind of like that. It looks like there's some structure holding these blocks up. Then I've added in circles, of course, because I always do circles. And I wanted, again, because I like weight more toward the bottom of the quilt so that it feels grounded. So the largest and darkest circle is at the bottom, and then the lightest ones, it goes lighter as we go up and smaller as we go up. I offset them a little bit because I didn't want to be too symmetrical about the whole thing, just to see. And there isn't much difference between that bottom circle and the next size up, but there could certainly be much more difference in them. Now, and in the photos, I don't know if it looks this way on my screen, but it looks to me like that darkest circle that I had kind of is a nice contrast almost, isn't it? That isn't actually black. It looks black to me, but it's actually just a deep charcoal color. And I think I might kind of like that, actually. Haven't explored that because most of the colors are so soft that a gray seemed more appropriate for them. Then for this one, I decided I would combine the gray lines with circles. And I've got one gray line that you kind of tend to not see, I guess, on the left side because it looks like a border of some sort. But that's a gray line running through the top of the quilt, through the quilt top. And then I have another line that's running under the blocks with a large yellow circle on it. I decided I wanted to try some colors that are the same colors, the same fabric actually, that is in the blocks. and then 2 smaller circles up on the upper right. Again, they're smaller, and actually value-wise I think they're lighter, so I still have that larger circle to ground the piece. And I kind of like that. It's fairly, I don't know, not exactly rigid, but more of a grid sort of situation. So then I decided that I would pull out some blocks and replace them with single circles. So I took out 3 blocks and replaced them with circles, again with the darkest, largest at the bottom, etc., etc. And I placed them sort of in the middle of where the block would be if there were blocks there. And I kind of like that. There's something nice about that. And then I decided that I would shift them so that they weren't in the middle of their respective block areas. And I shifted the purple down and the pink up, so it isn't quite so rigid or symmetrical. And I think I might like this one the best. At some point, in fact, I might go in and add the lines that were on the left that had both vertical line and horizontal lines, and see how that looks. I think it might be too much. And I've got 3 lines and 3 circles. I could also shift one of these columns of blocks a little to one side. So either the one on the left or the right, shift it over a bit, or shift both the left and the right different distances from the center. And that would add a little bit of space in between it. That might be something else to try. I do tend to like negative space and asymmetry. You may have noticed that. But something I might try in the future. As I'm talking through these, I'm thinking of other things that I might do with it, and I hope and imagine that you are too. So also feel free to share those ideas for how I might treat these differently, arrange them differently, other things that I might add in there. And again, of course, let me know which ones you like best. So that will be it for this week. Next week, I am completely clueless about what I'll do. Oh, before I go, I want to say hello to any of the quilters from Clarinda that I met over the weekend. It was a pleasure to join you and to spend a little time with you and to see what the quilters who were retreating were working on. It was a great pleasure to be there and see all of you. So if any of you are watching, hi, thank you. So next week, I'll come up with something. I hope to see you then as well. In the meantime, be well, be safe, be happy, be quilting. Peace out.